Jacqueline Hannibal. I was a Latine from Laurier. My father's family farmed east of Laurier. They had quite a bit. We get our Métis heritage from my maternal grandmother. My father was actually from Belgium, which was kind of neat. Mm-hmm. That's why some of my brothers have blue eyes. I didn't. We grew up in Laurier, the typical French Canadian town, you know, like we had the Catholic school. We only had one grandmother living while I was growing up, and we spent a lot of time there. Her house is still known now. People talk about it because it was a little log house in the center of the town. And that's where we spent most of our time. My grandmother she was the one people called upon when someone was sick or dying, or to prepare the bodies for, you know, burial and stuff. So that was always very interesting. She was full of stories, and she told us a lot of stories about being young and going to powwows she would call it dances. And it was pretty neat. It was very good. She was a Berriot. Her mother was a Nolan. Nolan is such a common name in our history. So yeah, it was pretty good. So I got a lot of my knowledge, if you want to call it that, from my grandmother, because I always say, you know, like even before we got Métis cards and that, I knew what I was. I can remember saying that when I was told I needed a card. It was like, why? It was good, and the school, the French, you know, we spoke French. There was kind of a mixture, right, of the languages. I didn't know it at the time, because what we spoke at my mamère was not what we spoke at school, right? It was much more the Parisian French that we spoke at school. So it's just one of those things, I guess, yeah.
So was the language spoke at your grandmother's Michif?
I believe it was. I didn't know. You know, it was French as far as we were concerned, but there was a lot of words that now I look back and think, There's one word in particular I keep wanting to find, and she used to always call us this when we were kids. And I had looked it up later on in life, and it meant you little devil.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Wow. Do you know the word still? Do you know what it was?
No, I cannot remember what it was. But, you know, you were reminded quite frequently at school who you were and, you know, where you came from, kind of thing. Yeah. I kind of laugh now because some of the people that I meet at various functions, I think, he used to call me names in school, you know.
Yeah.
As time goes by, it's become more acceptable, and even among family members, you know, it has become more accepted. And it's like, we were probably more fortunate than a lot because we lived on a farm. We had our own meat, potatoes, big gardens. So, you know, the store stuff was really just, I don't even remember, like, odds and ends. The one thing that sticks in my mind the most, I think, is growing up. I remember going to someone's place and they were having craft dinner, and I didn't know what it was.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, you can make this," and I don't know what it is. Didn't know what to do with it. Like, we didn't have craft dinner. We didn't have canned soup. Everything was made and macaroni was what you put in soup. Mm-hmm. I was the youngest of 7, and I think I got away with more than others, but everybody had their chore. Like, you didn't just get up from the table and leave. You got up from the table and you cleared plates, and this one washed, this one dried, this one put away. There was always, everybody had a chore to do. Even the little kids had something to do. Mm-hmm. You just didn't sit around and do nothing. And then in the summer, well, you know, the gardening took a lot of time, you know, shelling peas, picking potato bugs, yes. I hear people talk about big gardens. They don't know what a big garden is. You know, like we had like a wagon box full of potatoes.
Yeah, like massive.
Massive. But I mean, you know, there was a lot of people to feed. And they ate meat, potatoes, and vegetables 3 times a day, probably. In that respect, we were fortunate because we had eggs, we had chickens, we had pork. So we had, you know, all that other stuff that I don't know what the town kids ate, you know, like. I think the major entertainment would have been, especially in the summer, was like the ballparks. And in the winter, it was the outdoor rink. We often talk about the outdoor rink because, like, it didn't matter if it was 40 below. If there was a tournament, we went, you know, and you stood outside and, you know.
Kept warm, right?
It did, and when you got really cold, you went in the shack and stood around the stove a little bit, and then we went back. And I think that was the major thing, for kids anyway, you know, was the rinks and the ballparks. That was about it, you know. Like, I often think too, you know, kids nowadays, like, we used to walk 3 miles to this guy's place because the river was there and it was easily accessible there, and it was a nice bank, and walk 3 miles home. And I don't think we'd do that now. And as a kid, like, we left the yard or went out into the yard in the morning. And well, if you didn't come home for lunch, you didn't get any, but you know, and that was it. Like, you just wandered around the bush and went to the river. We lived along the river, so we were fortunate in that respect, and just wandered. And I think that's something that's missing. Kids don't get to see, like, it was nothing to see a deer, or, you know, where we lived, there wasn't a lot of other animals. There was deer, and, you know, we snared rabbits and that kind of stuff. But I don't know that anybody would let their 5-6-year-old kids just wander, you know. Most of the time when I went to school, till my parents moved to town, we rode the school van. Like, it wasn't even a van, it was a half-ton with a box made on it, you know, and benches. And you rode on that and you went to school. Everybody got to school like that, so we were, you know, wasn't a big deal. I didn't stay at school for lunch like some of the other kids because my grandmother lived right by the school, so we'd go to grandma's for lunch. So that was always good. And if it stormed and the bus didn't come, quite often, not all the time, but quite often, my dad would just hitch up the sleigh and take us to town.
Dragging you down.
Yeah,
you're going to school.
You're going to school. The school in Laurier, well, the high school, like where the actual school is now, was the high school. That was the high school.
Okay, yeah.
And just kind of to the north of it was the elementary school. It was a big white 2-story school. Okay. And now I think in that yard where the old school used to be, there's apartments, isn't there? Or they built the high school, I think, in the early 60s, I believe. Prior to that, it was 1 to 12.
Okay, yeah.
And then they built the high school, and then we went to grade 8 in the school. But no, it was a big school. The original high schools, like McCreary, St. Rose, Laurier, Kelwood, they were all built about the same time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The high schools. Okay. And they all, at that time, they all looked pretty much the same.
Yeah.
You know, now they've all had renovations to them, but
yeah. What were some of the challenges for Métis people growing up in the area at the time?
I don't know if there was that many challenges, you know, other than, you know, the usual kids being kids and picking on each other sort of thing. But no, I don't think there was a whole lot. I think everybody was kind of lumped in together and, you know, yeah.
What do you remember most about, like, growing up?
I think it's being at my grandmother's and listening to the stories and wishing now that, you know, that I had written them or done something, you know. Yeah. But yeah, the storytelling and the reason for everything. Yeah. She, you know, everything that was done, there was a reason. Like, she would always, I was thinking on the way here too, you know, I had just wiped off my boots, and one of the things she always said, if you're going somewhere, always make sure your shoes are clean. Why? I'm not sure. But that was, you know, the type of thing. She was there, and a lot of the superstitions too. And I know that our people are tend to be a little on the superstitious side, and she would always, you know, like, don't look at the full moon head on. Always look at it over your left shoulder. Yeah. If you're looking at the full moon, because it's bad luck to look at it straight on.
Or don't whistle at the northern lights.
Don't whistle at the northern lights. No.
Yeah.
I didn't raise my children in Laurier. I raised my children in Ochre, and they really get annoyed with me because I didn't teach them French.
Oh, okay.
My kids, but you know, I'm married to a man that speaks only English in an English community. It was just easier to just speak English to them. When my kids were little, there wasn't that many young people in town, and so they kind of, you know, now you wouldn't let your kids run all over the place. Even in a small town, I don't think. Run, you know, get on your bike and go, you know. Whereas when my kids were little, it was like, let me know where you're going. And whereas now, you know, it's just a different era.
Very right.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be raising kids right now.
No.
I think times have changed for the better. Not a lot of people would feel that way, I don't think, but I think acceptance. You don't have to hesitate to say to somebody, yeah, I am Métis, you know. Somebody would say that to me when we were younger, and it would be, you know, like, why are you asking?
Yeah.
And now it's like, yeah, how to make something of it, you know.
You can say it openly with pride.
With pride, and that's, I think, the biggest change that I think has happened is people have been given back their sense of self.
Was it Métis back in the day? Like, was it, did they call you Métis? Or that wasn't the words they used?
No.
No.
What they did, well, most of the time it was Métis.
Métis?
They'd say Métis.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, like where it became changed from that to that, or if that was just people being derogatory. But since my mom's gone, my brothers are all gone now, I have no one to speak French to. Like, I can understand much better than I can speak now, which is a real shame. I think right now we still face a lot of, I don't know if discrimination is the right word, but you almost get discriminated by your own people.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, I've had people say, well, so-and-so, like, he says he's Métis, but he's got blue eyes. Yeah, does. You know?
Yeah. You know.
And that kind of thing, I think there's the mindset that Métis people have to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true, and it's never been true.
Yeah.
You know, but people do get these ideas, these notions that everyone should look native. Right now, there's a lot being done that there wasn't even 30 years ago. Even 20 years ago, I think it was not as open. There was no place to go to find out things, like to go and talk to. There just wasn't these things to do. Like, if you wanted to know more, you were on your own.
Yeah.
You know, and now there's so many avenues open that it's great. Like even going into the head office in Winnipeg of the MMF and looking at their displays. It's fabulous. Some of that is from my family, which is great, you know, and you just didn't have that. Whereas now there's just so much. People are more interested in knowing who and how and why than it used to be. Like, it's not as easily or not as simply accepted for what it is. Mm-hmm. It's just like, we are Métis, therefore we did this too. Like, you know. Our people hunted and lived off the land, and that's in part why a lot of the Métis people, the Red River settlers, that's why, you know, my family included, lost some of their land because they were hunter-gatherers, right? They took off hunting for months at a time. When they came back, well, their land was taken because they had left. Well, they hadn't left it. They had just went away for a while because, like, we were the nobodies, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we weren't native, we weren't white, and neither the twain shall meet kind of thing, you know, and it was, and now it's like we are ourselves. And I've had people, even going through the MTA, I've had people come up and say, are you Métis? Like, and they'll whisper it, like, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. And they'll say, yeah, me too. And a lot of people probably wouldn't have acknowledged it anyway. Because we knew who we were, we knew where we came from, we knew who our ancestors were, but you didn't say it. Mm-hmm. You know, we just didn't say it. It was just accepted, and that was it. Mm-hmm. You know, and it was, you know, acceptance into the communities, you know. It's kind of funny in a way, because being who she was, I'm sure a lot of people wondered where she got her knowledge, you know? Yeah. Like, well, in part, I think education, and I don't mean school education, I mean people have wised up and realized that, you know, just because you're a little bit different than Joe Blow down the street doesn't make you a bad person. I think that's a lot of it, is people have learned over the years to smarten up. Going to the schools, the nuns were the catalyst of segregation, right? Mm-hmm. I would never in a million years have said that I had native blood in me to one of the nuns, because it would have been probably a slap. And it's been a challenge to our people to maintaining your Catholic beliefs. It's been a struggle, even like for myself, because you were taught to just accept what they told you, right? Everything that you were told was true. And you know, priests and nuns were like way up here, like they were damn near saints, and the rest of us were just peasants down below. And now I think, you know, the way schools were and kids getting abused at school was power. You didn't dare go home and say, well, I got the strap today, because you'd probably get it again.
Yeah.
They didn't dare argue with a nun or a priest, the parents. So, you know, yeah. And my brother always used to, and I don't know if that counts, like, he went to what used to be, it was called Juniora. It was probably in his late 50s, early 60s before he even told us about the hell that he went through there. How he confronted the priest involved many years later, and he denied it. He said all I wanted him to do was admit that he beat me, and he wouldn't. Catholic families would send their boys, because, you know, they would be trained to be priests or whatever, you know, and he said, you know, he wrote home many times to my dad saying, come and get me. I can't stay here, come and get me. And he said, when he got back home, he said to Dad, why didn't you come and get me? And he said, never got any letters. When he got really hurt one day, or hurt him really bad, he had a dislocated hip. And he said, they finally decided to take him to the hospital, and said, and you did this playing hockey. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of how things have progressed now. Yeah. Now people can actually talk about it. You know, if you got beat up, if you got abused, it was your fault. I must have done something wrong. You know? And that mentality has changed now. Slowly it's changing. I always say, you know, like Catholics, you're guilty. Before you're always guilty of something, right?
Yeah. Do you have any words of wisdom for our Métis youth today?
Follow your dreams. Dream big and follow your dreams. You know, don't let anybody tell you you can't. You can do whatever you set your mind to. And if somebody tells you you can't, tell them where to go. You know, the sky's the limit. Kids nowadays have so many opportunities. Do anything you want to be.